Okay, so on to rule 6, the penultimate rule. And the main idea of rule 6 is when I've got something to the power of negative n, we flip it into a fraction and we drop that negative sign. So let's take a look at some examples, and I've got a few different ways this rule can appear in a question. So I've actually got quite a few examples to go through here. So let's jump straight to it. So here I've got evaluate 4 to the power of minus 2. What evaluate means we're going to have to do a little bit of the solving. We're going to have to actually do stuff with our numbers. It's basically the same as calculate, but for some reason people get a bit confused. So that 4 to the power of negative 2, flip it into a fraction. So I've got 4 squared, or 1 over 4 squared. And when I do that 4 squared on the bottom, I get 16. So again, here, I've got 2 to the power of negative 3. So I flip it into a fraction and have 1 over 2 cubed. Then 2 cubed is just going to be 8. So I have 1 over 8. Because remember, 2 times 2 is 4, times it by 2 again, gives you 8. Now, this one here, I've already got my fraction and the power is on the bottom. And it's kind of just the reverse. I can flip things back up to the top of the fraction. So I can flip that back up to the top and drop the power. And so then 8 squared is just 64. And then next one here, I've got 1 over 10 to the power of a negative 4. Same idea, I can flip it back up to the top of the fraction. So I've got 10 to the power of 4. And then 10 to the power of 4, 10 times 10 is 100, times it by 10 is 1,000, times it by 10 again is 10,000. And then last one of our evaluating here. Here I've got 1 over 3 in brackets, and then that minus 3 on the outside. So same idea with our 3 and the 4, it's just positioned slightly differently. I can flip that fraction around, so I now just have 3 cubed, which is going to be 27. Okay, next one, example, simplify your answer with a positive power. So right now, this power is negative. We want it to be positive, and the way to do that is to use our rule. So I flip it over and I drop negative sign. And there we can see we've gone from a negative power to a positive power. Okay, so question 2. Now this, what happens here is similar to what happens with our power of 0. That minus 10 right now is only affecting the thing it's next to, so that is separated by a little multiplication. So only that a is being affected by that negative 10. And therefore, the 3 is going to stay on the top, but the a goes underneath. Same here as well, so remember, between them, that is just going to be a multiplication. And only the w is affected by that negative power. So the 5 stays on top. 5 stays on the top. And the w goes underneath with that negative dropped. Alright. Next one's then. So I've got simplify, giving your answer with a positive index. So positive index, that's another way to describe a power. So all of these are indexes as well. I think rules of indices, that word is related to it. So to start off with, I've got things multiplied together, so that's going to be my rule 1, where I have things multiplied, which means I add the powers. So 4 times 6 is going to give me 24. Then 3 add negative 10. 3 add negative 10 is going to give me negative 7. Then, right now my power is negative. So now I want to use my rule 6 in order to make that power positive. So right now, that negative 7 is only affecting my b. So I'm going to have 24 on the top, and on the bottom is going to be b to the power 7. And that's it. My power is now positive. Okay, next one here then. So this is one where you can go about it in 2 different ways. Personally, I think it's a bit easier to deal with this negative part first. So I'm going to do that. But this is actually a rule where, this is actually one where I can do one of my other rules first. But I'm going to do rule 6 first. So by doing that, this whole thing is in brackets. That means that whole thing is being affected by that negative 2. So it's going to turn into 1 over 9c to the power 4 all squared. And then at this point here, I now need to use my rule 4. And remember, rule 4 is when I've got something to the power inside of brackets and multiply the powers, as well as my rule 5 when I have 2 things, each thing is affected individually. So both of those are going to come into effect in this next part. So that squared is going to affect the 9. So I'm going to have 9 squared. And then it's going to affect this c to the power 4 squared. So that's going to be c 4 times 2, using my rule 4 there. And then I just need to neaten it up. So 9 squared is 81. And then 4 times 2 is 8. And so like I said, you can actually go about it this way first. But then your rule 6 can be a little bit harder to see what to do. Okay, next one then. So I've got 5b to the negative 3, 2b to the power of 3, and 8b to the power of 7. So, naturally, I'm going to change that to 5. So, what we're going to do here, firstly, brackets mean we're multiplying, so we've got to multiply this 5b to negative 5 with that 2b to the power of 3. So I'm going to be using my rule 1 first. So 5 times 2 is 10. Then negative 5 add 3 is going to be negative 2. Then multiplying that 5b to the power negative 5 with the 8b to the power 5. So 5 times 8 is 40. Then negative 5 add 5 is 0. So now I'm going to do a bit of tidying up, and here, as well as my rule 6, I also need to use my rule 5, which I just realised earlier I misnumbered these. That should be rule 3 and that should be rule 4, my bad. And so rule 5, remember that is anything to the power of 0 is 1. So here I've got 10b to the power of negative 2. So that negative 2 is only affecting the b, so I'm going to have 10 over b squared. So remember, this is only being affected by that negative power. And then here I've got 4b 40, and then b to the power 0. That b to the power 0 is only going to affect that one little bit. So that'll be 40 times 1, which will just be 40. And then question 4 here. So question 4, firstly, I've got my rule 3 occurring with this bracket here, so that n squared to the power of 3. So I'm going to use my rule 3 first to just neaten that up. So I'm going to have n and then 2 times 3, which is going to give me 6. So remember, multiplying the powers here. 2 times 3 gives me 6. Then I've got powers multiplied together. That is now my rule 1. So it's going to be n to the power of 6 plus negative 10. 6 plus negative 10 is going to give me negative 4. And now I can use my rule 6. And that will just be 1 over n to the power 4. So obviously at this point here, we can now start bringing in a lot of our other rules into play. And it does take a little bit of time, but as you do more and more of these questions, you'll be able to spot these rules easier. You'll be able to know what one is better to tackle first. And it just does take a bit of practice to get there. Let me know if there are any issues, and good luck.